If you want to lead as a CISO, a cyber strategist, a leader, or a business enabler, you need to learn this skill. This video isn't theory, it's the same approach that helped me secure budgets year after year. Most CISOs or security leaders can't quantify their specific organization's exposure, struggle to find the budget, end up underinvesting in key areas of increasing business risk, and the cycle continues. So you must speak the language of business continuity, customer trust, and regulatory compliance from day one. It's not about you having everything covered through your own budget. It's more about actually moving the needle forward. I'm giving you my step-by-step framework to justify cybersecurity budgets to your board or your executive leadership team. Justifying the budget isn't just about money, it's about trust, it's credibility. You have 15 minutes with the board or with the executive team, and you know your cybersecurity team is stretched, your tools are outdated, and your AI risks are piling up. But here's the problem. Neither your board or your executive team usually understand the language that you're speaking. They don't speak in vulnerabilities. They speak in 3 R's, which is revenue, risk, and reputation. Cybersecurity spending is expected to hit around $377 billion globally by 2028. But board approvals, they're getting tighter, and security leaders' budgets are getting smaller. And with Gen AI, hybrid threats, and expanding regulatory pressure, the stakes have never been higher. This video isn't theory, it's the same approach that helped me secure budgets year after year in highly regulated industries, even during downturns. Hi, I'm Monica, a board-certified cybersecurity leader, an AI expert, former CISO, speaker, and entrepreneur. I've sat on both sides of the table, defending the security budget and scrutinizing it. And today I'm giving you my step-by-step framework to justify cybersecurity budgets to your board or your executive leadership team, especially when every dollar is under scrutiny. Because here's the truth. If you can't speak the executive, the board, or the business language, you won't get the budget, period. So let's break it down. So here are the absolute 3 fundamental steps you need to take to secure the budget. Step number 1, align security objectives or security to business objectives. Because the biggest mistakes security leaders make are a couple of them. They go in with technical jargon overload. So you speak in like security technical terms, CVE scores, CVSS ratings, while the board thinks in business terms, revenue, impact, or revenue impact, operational disruption. So what's the result? Budget gets denied. Why? Because 15, 20, whatever minutes of valuable board time or executive leadership time was wasted on information that the audience couldn't use for decision making. So what happened? You lost credibility. The board couldn't understand the value proposition, so they saw no reason to invest. Other mistakes that leaders make is they use fear, uncertainty, and doubt approach, or the FUD approach. That may work once, that may work twice, but it's not a long-term strategy. Saying things like, oh, we're maybe under cyber attack often and frequently, or oh, that's a really, really high risk and it's happening to us and the world is falling apart. That's just noise that ultimately becomes background noise rather than actionable intelligence. Because you're not providing any context, you're not providing a reasoning for prioritization. There's a lack of business relevance and connection supported by data. A point comes where you lose that trust. Yet another mistake that I see leaders make very often is that they miss the mark on metrics that actually matter. They don't translate security metrics into business impact. Vulnerability count isn't enough. It's not just about compliance. It's not just about protecting the business. It's about helping the business grow, helping the business continue serving its mission. So instead, you need to align security to business objectives. And why does it actually matter? In 2024, security accounted for approximately 13% of IT budgets, up from 8% in 2020. So boards are investing more, but only when they see clear business value. Add to that, overall security spending is forecasted to grow 15% in 2025, with global expenditures expected to reach $212 billion. So you must speak the language of business continuity, customer trust, and regulatory compliance from day one, and tying the outcomes of your security investments into metrics that matter to the business. For example, trend in threat level change, quantitative impact of cyber risk or enterprise risk, increase in sales and business due to your security portfolio, reduction in time to detect a potential cyber attacks, and how it would then reduce the disruption to the business. Attend quarterly business reviews before your security presentation. So there are a couple of things that you really need to do, right? So here are some of the unpopular yet key best practices that I would recommend that you should do. Attend those quarterly business reviews before your security presentation because you need to understand how your business works. To map every security initiative to a specific business outcome and overall business goals. Remember, your security strategy needs to tie directly to your business's goal and mission statement. Then things like use the CEO's own words from the company meetings in your presentation. What is more powerful? And tie how it will support that. Never mention a security tool without explaining its business benefit first. And start by understanding what's keeping your CEO, your board, your executive team awake at night. Revenue loss, customer trust, regulatory fines. You need to translate security risks into business risks that they understand that it matters to them. So instead of just saying we need 200K for zero trust tools, say something like we risk X million GDPR fine and X hours of operational downtime unless we close these specific identity gaps. And here's how we can use a zero trust framework that can help us reduce that and prevent that from happening. The implementation will cost, let's say, whatever, 200K, and it will basically help us protect from the risk and reduce operational downtime and fines that could lead to somewhere between 500K to a million. So the pro tip is that you're basically saying the cost of investing in security is actually much, much, much lower than the cost if you didn't invest in it. Here's another pro tip, okay? Use the board's own language, such as financial risk, brand reputation, regulatory exposure, market trust, whatever matters to them, what they care about. That's kind of very important. So tying that understanding, that storytelling, and the data points together builds a cohesive story. It's not just about one or the other. Step number 2, quantify the risk. Again, there are some common mistakes that security leaders make when they're talking about this stuff, right? Vague threat statements. Nation threat attackers are our biggest threat actors and have increased drastically. Okay, so what does that really mean? When you have asked for specifics, then you say, I'll get back to you. And then what happens? The board only approves 30% of your requested budget because you couldn't assess the real risk. And then you wonder why that happened. Another mistake is using generic out-of-box risk reporting. CISOs often report cyber risk posture based on what their tools tell them, which typically focus on aggregates of operational activities like scans or MFA implementations that neither your board nor your executive team actually care about, or vulnerability remediation efforts, but then without business context or even one-size-fits-all measures. Yet another one is that what they don't do versus what's actually critical. They don't quantify their organization's specific risk exposure. You need to calculate company-specific risk scenarios and provide data based on your actual assets, data, attack surface, business model. Example, when you say we face significant cyber risk, what is significant, right? An orange color is not enough. There is inability to show progress. Absolute metrics only mean so much. The real value is in showcasing the progress and trend over time. Without quantified risk exposure, you can't demonstrate if security investments are actually reducing risk over time or not. So why does quantifying a risk really matter? Why is it so important? Cybersecurity failures are quietly draining business budgets, costing companies billions annually, yet most CISOs or security leaders can't quantify their specific organization's exposure, struggle to find the budget, end up underinvesting in key areas of risk, increasing business risk, and the cycle continues. So here are some unpopular yet key best practices that I have done and then you should be doing as well. Number 1, calculate breach costs using your company's revenue per customer, not just industry averages. Yes, you can use those for benchmarking, but that's what it is, benchmark. Present 3 scenarios, best case, realistic, and worst case, financial impact or operational impact, something that's tangible. Show the cost of doing nothing in dollars over 3 years. Use your company's hourly operational cost to quantify downtime impact, because nothing gets attention like numbers and data. Numbers that have your business model, are based on your data, and are relevant to your organization. So you want to show what is the cost of inaction. What's the potential financial impact of a breach or non-compliance? What's the ROI of prevention? Use frameworks like FAIR or even basic cost modeling. For example, if you're considering a potential risk of a ransomware attack, don't just be generic, oh, we have a very high risk of ransomware attack, right? Rather think of specific ransomware attacks on particular service, or like say, for example, payment service that is deployed across EMEA region, which says contributes to 70% of your revenue, which is say $1 million for sake of simplicity. What could a ransomware attack to that particular service in that particular region for that particular part of the business, what could that cost you? And if that ransomware attack and if that service completely shuts down, that could cost you $5 million in recovery based on your actual disaster recovery efforts. And that's the number you need to provide. Now, it would be a no-brainer to ask for $500K for investment in increasing the defense, reducing the exposure, and reducing the recovery time by 80%, thereby also reducing the overall cost of recovery, because you have actually quantified what the cost of inaction is going to be. This is a real example. Another one that I had in one of my roles as a CISO and head of security, enterprise risk, and business continuity is that I went to the board. I had a board meeting with them, and I had calculated Equifax equivalent type of data breach for our business. I showed them the Equifax breach cost, which was in billions. I showed them our business relevant number, which was somewhere in 100 millions, and I was just asking for a few 100,000. Selling that story with that number gave me the budget without any pushback. So it's again what I said, you need to tie the relevant data with an emotional story that matters to them, and you need to do it more in a quantified way. Step number 3, build a tiered investment plan. So again, a couple of mistakes that I see people making in this case. Mistake number 1, all or nothing budget requests. I know a CISO at a tech startup that requested his boss for $200K for some comprehensive security maturity fix with no alternative. That was his ask for everything that he needed to fix security. When the manager said he only could give him $80K, but since the boss couldn't understand what it would be going into, ultimately what he got was nothing, because he got $0. And he asked him to actually provide him a better budget information next time. So he missed his financial deadline. He missed the fiscal year for getting the budget for that year, and he had no budget until the next year, asking his boss for every approval for every investment that he needed to then make in that year. Mistake number 2 is that you have no clear prioritization and no clear logic of how that should be prioritized. So when you go to your executive team or your board, right, to ask for money, you need to go with a prioritized list. Investment in GDPR issue is a high priority and a must, or investment in a new IAM solution is key for our 2-year roadmap, but medium priority. If you can fix the PAM first and then look into IG and IAM next year, that should work. So things like that. Just asking for 15 different needs that you have without explaining why endpoint detection was more critical than network monitoring and how it would move the needle forward. What happens? It doesn't get you so far, and it doesn't get you the budget that you need. So what happens is that the executive team, the board, cannot make informed decision based on either the priority list, or they cannot make any trade-offs. And the decision is then deferred for either 6 months or setting you back 6 months in time, or it just basically said that you get nothing, right? Another mistake is hoarding the budget ownership. What do I mean by that? Now, the problem is that most security leaders want to hoard everything in their budget more than actually wanting to move the needle forward, or actually moving the needle forward. So in one of the companies where I was working as a group CISO, one of the years, I know we had a lot of strategic bets that we needed to make in security that year. We had our budget, we had approved our budget. We were still short on something for one of the strategic bets. And those investment was a bit more than what we had for the budget. So those strategic bets included a lot of key projects like IAM, real-time threat monitoring, real-time and tailored live reporting. And one of those bets was also related to an EDR solution implementation that came in later. So what I do is I go to and talk to my CTO, and I convince him to take the ownership of the implementation of the EDR solution instead of my team, while my team would still be responsible for the security requirements, for engineering, for verifying configuration, for testing. That way, I get an important yet expensive problem fixed with someone else's budget who also cared about solving the problem. So of course, it would not have worked if I was not able to convince him and show him why it would help him and his IT landscape as well, and why it would matter to him as well. So it's not about you having everything covered through your own budget. It's more about actually moving the needle forward. So if you can't do it with your own budget for whatever reason, find an ally, right? Convince him it's a win-win. So why does a tiered investment plan actually matter and help? Because boards and leadership teams manage portfolios and they need options, not ultimatums. They want to understand the incremental value of each investment tier. So here are some unpopular yet key best practices. Show what is investment versus what is the risk reduction for each tier. Identify which business functions are protected at each investment level, which will help them also prioritize an actual business need and tie it directly to that. Prepare to defend why tier 1 items are truly non-negotiable. So because I would divide my entire ask into 3 levels and present the plan in 3 tiers. Tier 1 would be non-negotiables. The critical burning risk exposure we have right now that we must fix to avoid a direct impact to the business or get a penalty or a compliance must have, right? For example, endpoint protection, because we realize a whole bunch of BYODs in tens and thousands number that have zero protection on it, but they're accessing customer data or a regulatory requirement that is going to lead to investigations by the authorities if we miss it and we don't do it on time. So those are like tier 1. Tier 2 will be something like strategic investments. So business risk-based improvements, for example, identity modernization, cloud posture management. So that will depend on your business. Tier 3 would be more competitive enablers, right? Initiatives that support innovation and AI adoption securely, for example. So give them these options because board respect decision makers who lay out choices. Boards and executive leadership teams like options, not ultimatums. So here's a key takeaway. I've seen brilliant security leaders get ignored not because their ideas were bad, but because they couldn't translate them to the board, to the executive teams, to other business stakeholders. If you want to lead as a CISO, a cyber strategist, a leader, or a business enabler, you need to learn this skill. Justifying the budget isn't just about money, it's about trust, it's about credibility, it's about moving the needle forward. So while you provide your quantified and calculated risk reduction budget options, do not get defensive. Learn how to prioritize. Always anticipate budget constraints. Be strategic and partner up with an ally in the organization to share the budget burden. It won't be easy, but it's doable, especially if it's a win-win. All right, that's it. I get it. Getting the budget approval from the board can be a bit tricky. So just follow these 3 steps that I shared with you and you'll be there for most parts, I promise. Subscribe to my newsletter, Monica.cyber, for regular insights on building resilience in the world of AI. And let me know in the comments below, what's the biggest budget challenge that you faced or that you're facing? Until next time, this is Monica signing off.